Ducktales, 20 years later. Episode 21. In 1951, years after the sky pirate menace had long since disappeared from the air over the Indies and Caribbean, a pirate hangout was discovered, or perhaps simply revealed, by a young pilot and adventurer based in Cape Cassette named Kit Cloudkicker. Soon after, the UN, in the process of forming a new international police organization for squelching worldwide crime, claimed the small volcanic island off the coast of Africa as neutral territory, instead of the secret headquarters of the Sky Inspection League, set up to police the problem of smuggling and piracy that still plagued the region. Carved out of volcanic mountain, and with enough space to store a small army, the island, still referred to Pirate Island, even when formally renamed after the director's just at the time as Hooter Isle, was a perfect place to police the corrupt Asiatic Isles. It was hot inside. The fire within the earth felt plainly through the thick natural stone walls. It had structural supports, safety really added only later, after a few unfortunate lava pool-related fatalities were reported. As the sea duck was towed out of the Iron Vulture into a small lagoon as a dock, the boys watched from a few empty seats near a guard house beside the lagoon as all of the people. They ran around, exclaiming to one another, whispering rumors and half-remembered truths. Almost as soon as the Iron Vulture had landed, the surviving crew had spread the story of the attack by Thembaria. It was answered by murmurs of war. Dewey shrank back in his seat as more than one accusatory eye came his way. "World War III," said Louis in civilian garb, his arms crossed over his chest as he looked off across the lagoon to the patch of sky he could see through the far-off opening. "It's really coming. World War III." "That's what they said," noted Dewey. "Thembaria are allied with the USSR. We're allied with China, North Korea, North Vietnam, East Germany, whatever communist nations I'm forgetting. Thembaria has picked a fight with the SIL, which is an arm of SHUS, which, although a neutral peacekeeping organization, is essentially American. With how much the Russians and Americans seem to like throwing around how many bombs they have, I wouldn't be half surprised if we're all glowing in half a year," said Huey bitterly. "No, this is not going to turn into DuckTales Fallout." Although that would be awesome. Louis shivered. "You really think they'd do it? Bombs?" "Honestly, I think the US will probably give it to them first. But we won't know it until it happens." "Where's your patriotism, Huey? It'll be the Russians who'll do it. I know it. It flew out the door once we started this war with Nam." He gave a sidelong glance to Louis. "I think you and I would see this closer on this sort of thing, considering..." "Considering what?" "Well, you always seem to be the, I don't know, rebellious one. At least where Uncle Scrooge is concerned." Huey leaned back, thankful for the sensitive subject. "Spending money like water, and going in for total selflessness and all that. Scrooge would have turned over his grave if he heard about your adventures in St. Canard." Dewey spoke up. "Uncle Scrooge was only one of our guardians, if you remember, Huey. And even then for only a few years." His eyes swiveled over to the scratched cheeks, which had grown to serious whiskers since that fateful day in Duckburg. "When you think about Uncle Donald, Louis was absolutely devoted to him." Huey frowned and turned away. "I suppose that's right. Listen," Louis said suddenly, turning his face to his brother from one another. "It's not like I'm pro-war or anything. It just scares the shit out of me, you know?" He smiled with a nervous sigh. "You never know when us superheroes are going to get called in by sus to go, I don't know, help out behind enemy lines. Who knows? Maybe someday I might be like Super Snooper, or punch out Hitler, or in this case Stalin, I guess. Maybe a little patriotism is what we heroes need just to do our jobs." "I don't like it." "You're not allowed to like it. That's the cool thing about the stupid country." Dewey was back to watching the crewmen walk back and forth. "I suppose with all the commotion, there's no hope for the investigation into Ferric to go through. If ain't luck, they'll forget all about us." He sighed. "Of course, that just leads back where we started." "It can't end here," said Louis resolute. "It just can't. And what if it does? I won't let it. These hands could potentially be punching out Stalin in a few years, so punk wannabe kingpin should be no problem. You say that now. smirked out Huey. But how tough could you be? Some 50-year-old duck put you on a stretcher for 2 weeks. Ha ha.
Here you go, Doofus, said Webby as he unwrapped the bandages from the formerly stricken shoulder. You're well enough to move, I think. Doofus sat up, placing a hand to his shoulder and moving it experimentally, working out the stiffness from not moving it too long. A small sick bay they sat in was brightly lit and sterile, and had a comfortable air conditioning system that protected the infirm from the heat of the cave it was located in. Doofus smiled sheepishly. Thanks, Webby. You're a lifesaver. It's just my job here, I guess. Team nurse, team dead mother, teacher, shoulder to cry on. You know, usual stuff for the token girl on these kinds of adventures. Dewey's spectacled face honed in on Webby suddenly, the strong gaze burning the hole in her soul. Why do you let Dewey jerk you around like he does, Webby? Can't be good for you. It makes me so sad to see. It's not all that bad, Doofus. He's my boss, and I'll stick by him. I haven't been paid yet anyway. I had to stick by him until then, at least. Don't joke about that, Webby. He's not good for you. Doofus's hand flew over to lay itself over Webby's resting on the hard hospital bed. Webby stood suddenly, tucking her arm away. Don't do this, Doofus. We both decided we weren't right for each other a long time ago. Don't reopen old wounds. But, Webby, he began to stand. I knew we grew apart. You had your career and I had mine. Sorry, both our lives conspired to break us apart, but he walked towards her slowly. But we both changed. I don't have to hide who I am anymore, and you... No, Doofus, stop! It wasn't just how unavailable you were. I know now why you were the way you were, and that makes me feel better, but... How's it any different from how Dewey is? He doesn't love you. He sees you as a tool for making money. You're just a secretary. Webby rounded on Doofus and held up an admonishing finger. Don't you dare, Doofus! Dewey's a good man. He's going through a lot right now. Can't be thinking about anything like that. But, Webby, Doofus, I'm warning you. Don't. Just don't. We had our chance together and you blew it. You broke my heart when you left for your own safety. I didn't know that at the time. Even though I now know, I feel like you could have told me. No, I couldn't have. I could have said to you two. What? I couldn't take it the truth? She shook her head. Doofus, I grew up for a long time in the Duck Mansion. Even after the boys moved back in with Donald, Grammy and I stayed in the mansion as staff. I was raised in the adventure just as much as the Duck brothers were. I think I could have taken knowing why the man I used to love disappeared, and when he came back, grew so distant so suddenly. I would have understood. I'm sorry. I wasn't thinking. It was just so new and exciting. But I've changed. I know what I'm doing now. Mr. Crackshell's back. I can stop all these horrible things I did in St. Canard. His hand on her shoulder, gentle. Please, Webby. Give me another chance. They were silent for a long time. Webby's shoulder feeling the warmth of her former love's hand on hers. She felt the old stir she used to feel around Doofus. Memories drifted back before the disappearance. He was just a normal boy, so different from the fantastic figures that surrounded her day to day. No. She shrugged out his hand off her shoulder. I'm sorry, Doofus. Maybe, perhaps. She began to walk out the door, leaving Doofus in the sterile office. Perhaps in another future. She walked out, arms twisted around herself as she looked down, tracing the path of her feet along the ground. Doofus stayed in the room for a moment, before closing his eyes and sighing, sitting down at the doctor's table and burying his face in his hands. A day went past, then 2, and finally 3. War brewed over the horizon, and there they were, right in the thick of it. The entire group was roundly ignored by most of the SIL, with only occasional friction between them and the Commodore, who still, on some level, believed they did it, and this belief tore them apart inside. With every day that passed, news from the outside got grimmer and grimmer. USSR and US peace talks were breaking down left and right, and it seemed that Denbury's attack would not go unpunished. For its part, the country remained unapologetic, although rumors of them starting the war to seek some sort of occult amulet were popular, and this belief, bits of comfortable wisdom, at least to those without knowledge of the ultimate goal of their former state sorceress. Dewey was hunched over at a long table the group used as some sort of meeting place, away from the prying eyes of the SIL. The room was adjacent to the hastily put-together sleeping quarters he had been given, which were much less nice than the ones aboard the Iron Vulture. On the other end of the table, Huey and the girls were chatting low, teaching and learning each other's bits and languages, while Louie discussed superhero trade with Doofus. Webby sat on Dewey's side, reading the only things he could, a silly romance novel that had been donated by the Iron Vulture's crew for use. Okay, which one of you? Was it you, Leroy? Yes! Darn it! From a small stack of the past few days' newspapers were delivered from Bombay, Dewey was reading an article in an Indian newspaper, using his knowledge of the Hindi language to keep tabs on the business dealings of Duck Enterprises. To his annoyance, stock prices on the Fair Krager were rising, even as he delivered some truly baffling changes to the structure of the company. Several industries were formerly at the center of McDuck's revenue base. For example, mining, banking, agriculture, and others were being closed out or reduced. I don't get it, said Dewey out loud, wrinkling his forehead at the latest news from yesterday's paper. I just don't get it. What is he planning to do? Webby looked up from her novel, finding conversation potentially more interesting. News from the front? Ferris has closed down several factories for automobile parts. He's literally robbing people of their jobs, but he's such a slick talker he's getting away with it. I can't see the profit in it. He spoke up. His conversation with Div is having a bit of snag regarding the correct procedure for taking down Mugger. Maybe he's got a backup plan. Close up some factories, open them later to a big old fanfare or something. Maybe he weren't enough to code, pushed little Ruby. You know how Uncle Scrooge would cut corners. Or maybe, began Dewey, shaking his head. Wish we could actually do something. I feel so useless here. We all do, Dewey, said Doofus, who was itching to put on a suit, but couldn't rest by seeing by the SIL. No kidding. I wouldn't give to just fly in there and bust some heads. It would never work, answered Dewey, as he turned the page. Moving from the business section to the arts, throwing the paper on a table. It wouldn't accomplish anything but make you guess look more suspect. I know, but it'd make me feel better. Right, Huey? What a scene! The girls nodded their heads in triumph. Maybe I'll say something in today's paper, said Webby, reasonably. She reached down to the stack and pulled out some more news, opening it right to the business section with a practiced unconscious motion before passing it over to Dewey, looking back down to her book. Webby's heart skipped a beat when she heard her boss say, Thank you. You're welcome, Dewey. Dewey was too engrossed in the business section to hear her, however, and began reading the fascinating writing in the Hindi language. In a moment, everyone went back to their individual conversations and tasks. Suddenly, Dewey slammed the paper on the ground. That double-crossing son of a bitch! What's wrong? Said Webby, startled from the Lady Argyle receiving a writ biases from the Duke of Versatile Glen, disguised as a pirate and robber baron Gregor the Cutthroat. It was at this moment on his way to claim the lady as his own forced bride. That bastard! He wouldn't! Dewey quickly took the paper back up and reread the passage, before throwing the paper towards the wall with a growl. What? Yelled Louie. Don't leave us in suspense. The factories he closed down. All those mines and industries. Dewey said quickly, causing his chair to clatter on the floor. He turned away, beginning to pace. What did he do? Weapon manufacturing! Bombs! Guns! Battleships! He's setting McDuck prices to a pure weapons manufacturer. He's closing down all the other non-essential wartime industries to focus on weapons. My God. This is... Suddenly a light came on behind Dewey's eyes. He ceased his nervous pacing and had taken up and looked at the wall, a terrible expression lighting up his face. A cruel mixture of fear and loathing and anger, all coming together to form an evil concoction upon his face. His eyes were wide and wild, his mouth bent down at a brutal angle, and his forehead creased as his brows rose up to meet the heavens. His body went rigid and his hands flexed outwards, keeping that position for as long as he held the face to become his greatest betrayal. That was his plan all along. Huey stood quietly, slowly saying, What do you mean? Dewey snapped at Huey. I mean, Huey, the Ferret planned all this. All of it. Seeds on Duckburg was his plan to take over the company, using us to tie up the SIL and sus so they wouldn't catch wise to the plot. He used Gizmo Duck to lock down the superhero contingent in St. Canard so they wouldn't raise a finger to stop him if they did figure it out. I'll bet! He grunted and turned, leaning on the wall with one elbow, looking with his tortured expression towards the ground. I'll bet he's somehow behind this new war as well. He used you, Huey, and Hire for Hire to get us mixed in with the Thembrians when they attacked. He must have heard about Matsuka's need for that dime, and knew I would never give it up. So he threw us together, counted on war. If we lost the dime, they would declare war on the world, and he wins. If we kept the dime, they would tear the world apart trying to get to it, and he wins! Why would he do all that? Asked Doofus, his hackles raising at the thought of being used as such an end. What possible reason? Dewey laughed. A horrible satanic noise that resonated with all of them. Money, 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 money. World War III is declared. He uses McDuck Enterprises to sell the Allies guns, rockets, bombs, makes a killing. Turns around and uses Khan Industries to sell the Soviets guns, rockets, and bombs. He uses our birthright to face both sides of the conflict. Devastatingly clever. Everyone looked at Dewey, shocked. Louis stood up slowly. My God, we gotta stop him. Louis right, said Doofus, standing out gallantly. Starting war to make money? That's diabolical. Well, what can we do? Said Webby, who stood as well. We can't just go in. But we must, said Dewey, cutting her off. We can't fight him the way we have been. We need desperate measures. He's covered his tracks too well. Governments are eating out of his hand, and the population is on his side, thanks to the sympathy vote for taking over McDuck when we were implicated in the raid on Duckburg. Sus is too busy preparing for World War III to do anything about him. We can't expose him. We have to stop him. Louis's face began to smile a bit. You mean it? Dewey nodded. By force. Yes, I will, said Webby, her heart saying yes, 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 but her mind saying being careful. They'll never let us go. Who needs their permission? Smirked out Huey, his fist finding purchase in the palm of his hand. The two SIL crewmen were rushing by the door to the conference room when the guests were using when they heard two unfortunate words. Blethering blatherskite! Soon enough, the entire wall blew open as rockets, fists, giant hammers, and various chainsaws and power tools sliced and knocked away. The crewmen tried to run, were buried under the rubble from the near instantaneous explosion of plaster and iron. Soon, a small stampede of footsteps echoed through the halls the group ran up. The karaoke girls, carrying the meager loads from the small crew, crowded up behind Huey, who ran joyously through the hall. Doofus, in his armor, led the charge along with Louis, in full costume, including drawn-on mask. Dewey pounded along at a secure clip, hand in hand with Webby, who carried a suitcase full of Dewey's few business papers and petty cash he insisted on bringing along. Soon, a ringing alarm blared out. The entire group was being chased from the halls. While Gizmo Duck's brute strength led the charge, and Louis' skill with ropes and bindings on backup, the group completely went unmolested as they ran towards the hangar. And beyond the lagoon where the Sea Duck was being moored. Get in! Yelled a familiar voice before a gunshot rang out, only to be flooded by a quick shield from Gizmo Duck. They're escaping! Huey looked over and saw the Commodore, jumping up and down from raids. He smiled inside as he ran. They were soon inside the wide cavern containing the lagoon, and were on their way to the Sea Duck. Suddenly, however, there was a loud snapping noise, and several of the lights went out. There was a wild laughing as a strange figure came flying towards them. The red emergency lights came on just in time to see the Commodore, brandishing his sword and swinging from an electrical wire. He slammed the wire against Gizmo Duck, began to vibrate as the sizzling air as he sorted out his suit. Run! Said Doofus, running towards the Sea Duck. Gizmo Duck! Cried Webby, before she was jerked on by Dewey. Louis complied, hurrying the rest of the group on, taking the bulk of the defense group. Soon, Dewey, Webby, and the rest of the girls ran to back up the ramp of the Sea Duck. Louis followed them up and did a quick kick count before exclaiming, Where's Huey? All eyes pointed over in a closely crowded SIL, where Huey had teared by to stand Gizmo Duck, scoring off against Perry Kidd, sword in hand. The idiot! Said Louis, before it became apparent the approaching SIL crewmen would keep him and the others too busy for his brother. The crack of Screw's musket resounded, and the firefight inside the Sea Duck had begun, the girls ducking inside the pilot cabin to keep themselves hidden from the strange bullets. Back over towards Gizmo Duck lay, stunned. Huey and the Commodore squared off against each other. Huey keeping one nervous eye towards the Sea Duck, which was being swarmed by SIL. Pay attention to your opponent when you fight him, cried Commodore. You insulted me. Of heaven forfend I insult you, Junior. Your friends are probably dead now. I knew you wanted to be the trusted. The guilty always run. Everyone runs, Junior. They're being chased. Perhaps everyone is guilty, perhaps. Because it's barely being caught. You and your brothers have been thorn in my side long enough. Yes? No? I am finally glad to be rid of you. To attack in the midst of war.
Because of the war, Junior, we've got to stop it.
Preposterous. You have no chance to stop it. You're just 3 men and some women. How could you?
We'll find a way. We'll find some way to stop Farrah Kagan. You can help us.
This is not how things are done! Screamed the Commodore, at the top of his voice. You cannot escape from me. It cannot be for something so noble, swine.
Fine, be that way.
Looks like the tides may be turning after all. His eyes looked out to the side briefly. The Commodore followed his gaze. It saw the crowd of SIL thinning out by a single black and yellow blur, jumping and punching through the crowd. Too fast or too heavily armored for the men to get a beat on with their guns. PK took down the crowd, helped soon by the Green Phantom and Dewey Duck. No, no, no! I cannot be defeated by the likes of you, enemies of justice and right!
Junior, quiet. You've lost.
You insist on calling me Junior. Because your mentor calls me Junior. Do you know why they call me Junior? Do you? He began to sweat. This confrontation not going as planned. They say I'm the son of Don Carlas, the pirate. They say my horrible mother could see me as he visited a piece of Spanish village, his hometown. They are wrong! He screamed, brandishing his sword as his speech became more and more unhinged. A man who would sack his own hometown would never be a father to me, who loves justice and right. The law is my father, and fair justice is my mother, and I am its proud servant. You are an enemy to that end, and I will strike you down! But if you sold, yes? Huey went to the Commodore sweating, wild-eyed face with a curled smirk, before he dropped to the ground, dropping down to the eccentric position of fisticuffs. You are different. You follow your blood like a sheep. Your anger at an uncle has given you a dishonest preference of combat.
Honor or not, I'm still kicking your ass!
Screaming, the 2 men came at each other. Kid struck first, swiping with his sword. Huey dodged to the right and fired a punch, which struck Kid's ribs, but allowed him to try a stab with his cutlass. Circling around, Huey streaked out of the way, peppering the wild, angry man with punches before laying a kick squarely to his ankle. Commodore cried out, going down to one knee and trying a wild slice. His marred, rigid style, bedazzled by rules and regulations, going out the window in the face of Huey's visit, made hard by fists, visits to cities from around the globe before he settled to keep Cosette. He punched, face, shoulder, face, stomach, each time taking on a little bit more of the joy in the fight, the enthusiasm that comes from knowing he's fighting someone with a measure of skill and still winning. Finally, the Commodore stirred and gave a little bellow, letting everything he hated about Huey come out through his voice. His nose began to gust blood of his perfectly white teeth as he slashed down. Huey stepped backwards, used to fighting men now by rays, and waited until the sword was once again raised to another familiar fencing position. He then gave a strong right cross, aimed for the broadside of the sword. Snap! Huey punched the sword and the blade snapped in half from near the base of the sheer force of his strike, tested against the steel grip by Petty the Kid. Deprived of a useful weapon, the Commodore dropped hopeless hill on the former sword, raised his own hands to defend himself, or he was struck out by the uppercut to the jaw. He landed a few feet back, struggled to stay awake, but his consciousness took him over. By this time, Gizmo's Duck systems had rebooted and he was getting up.
What happened?
Nothing much, said Huey. Come on! The two ran towards the crowd of the SIL and were dispersing, scared off by the loss of their leader, as well as from the demon who fights them so harshly. Huey and Gizmo Duck ran in, Huey with a big old smile on his face. His brothers called a tragic situation to him, but his face was focused on PK, was finishing up one last SIL goon. Maybe from the angle of the punch, or stance he was throwing it. But somehow, Huey felt that PK, at this moment, was a familiar, comforting presence, especially considering how similar the way he took care of the goon was to the way he took care of Junior. He was mesmerized by PK suddenly, shape matching up with his memories, calling up someone, one of the most influential people to his personality, and he felt a mixture of joy and disgust. He finally knew who PK was, couldn't help but feel elated by the knowledge. Hey, Huey, said a voice breaking out of his reverie. Slowly the rest of the cargo had registered. Benjamin closed and everyone gathered around him. What? Get your ass in gear, kid, said PK. You got a plane to fly. Looking translated to PK's single eye. He blinked, before giving him a giant shit-eating grin. Groovy. The sea duck was soon winding his way towards the lagoon, towards the exit, the parcel of sky getting larger and larger as Huey approached it, until it was filled with the vision beyond the windshield of the plane. Soon, with a bounce, the plane was in the air, and the group was off to face their final foe! To be continued.